Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcode.com, and time for the final video in this DOM masterclass, and this is going to be on web components. Now this is going to be an introduction to web components. I do have a separate web component masterclass series where I go much more in depth with how web components work, but figured this would be a good thing to cover in this sequence. So we've learned about plain vanilla DOM manipulation, which is plain JavaScript. We've learned about jQuery. Now, another cool tool you have available to you that's actually built into JavaScript in the browser. Okay, what you can do is you can create your own custom HTML tags, and these are referred to as web components. Okay, and the way these work is you just create JavaScript. Okay, so let's just create a basic one. Let me just clear out the HTML here. What you do is you use classes. So you're going to create a new class. We'll call this class like my component, just as an example. My component, which is going to extend HTML element. HTML element is the base class you'll use to always create these. So basically, the starting place is always my component extends HTML element, and then you have to create the constructor. And if you're not familiar with classes in JavaScript, please do watch my JavaScript classes masterclass and my videos on JavaScript object-oriented programming, where I explain how classes work and all their different pieces in depth. But constructor, so we're going to use the parent constructor, super. Okay, so there we go. Now, you know, we've done the basics. Like that's like the minimum. Right now it's not doing anything, but that's sort of the minimum. So the simplest thing we can do is to think of the HTML element as its own node. So in this case, this is really a node. So I can take advantage of that and be like this dot inner HTML, or let's say inner text equals, well, actually let's just do inner HTML equals an h1 that says hello world. Okay. So we've created the class. Now what I want to do is I want to make it an HTML tag that I can use. So what I can do is I can do const, no, actually it's going to be custom elements dot define. And then basically what we're going to do is we're going to specify what the name of the element is, which will, it's always got to be like 2 words with it's called kebab case because it has like the dash in the middle. Sorry for the sirens. I do live in Brooklyn, which is always filled with so many sounds. My component. And then the second argument is the class. So my component is the class we created. So what this means, anytime I use this HTML tag, it's going to use this class to determine what gets created there. So now I can go to my HTML and write my component, and it'll work. See, hello world. We just created a custom HTML tag. Cool. That's very cool. Now, here's the thing. This is, when I use it like this, it's using what's called the light DOM, which means this is going to be subject to all the CSS rules that are access to all my other, basically all the CSS will apply to this like it applies to the rest of my page, which is not necessarily always what you want, because maybe you want to create a component you want to use in multiple projects, and multiple projects will be styled different ways, and you really want this to kind of always look the same. Okay, so what you can do is you can create what's called a shadow DOM. What a shadow DOM does is it's going to take whatever HTML that this element has and puts it in a nice container called the shadow DOM, which can only be accessed from within. So to do that, what we have to do is we have to attach a shadow. So we're going to do this dot attach shadow. That creates the shadow, and then inside of it we have to pass in an object with a property called mode, which is always going to be open. I mean, you have a choice of open and close, but really it's always open. There's no reason to make it closed. It's an option you have if you want. Okay, so in that case, now that we have a shadow attached, we need to put the HTML inside the shadow root, so we don't want it as part of the normal document. Okay, we want it inside the shadow document, this sort of hidden sub-document. So the way you do that is that you do, from now on, instead of this, you use this dot shadow root. Think of shadow root. This dot shadow root is the same thing as like document. So this dot shadow root, that inner HTML, it still works. But now if I go to elements, I see there's my component, and see it has a shadow root. And because it's open, I'm actually able to look inside the shadow root. So I can see inside the shadow root's hello world. Very nice. Okay. And the benefit of the shadow root is that outside CSS won't affect it. So if I do CSS on an H1, so if I say, hey, H1s, I want them to be red, this should not be affected by that. So you see, like that H1, that red, it didn't turn red because it has the shadow DOM. The shadow protects it from the outside CSS. But what if I do want to style it? Well, then your best bet's to style it inside. Okay, so what I would usually do is I'll create a separate style tag. So what I'll do is I'll say const style equals, then I'll just write a style tag. Okay. And actually I should do that with backticks because you can't do multiple lines with double quotes. So get rid of that. Use another backtick here. There we go. And then I can write like H1, and I want H1s to be green, color, green. And then what I can do is I will inject that style tag. So I'll wrap this in, I'm gonna wrap this in backticks too. So what I can do is I can inject that code into the string like that. And see, now that's green because if I look inside and see there's a style tag, then after that the H1. I've injected the style, and this is just this way I can just write the style here and then write the HTML here. Just makes it a little bit easier to handle. Okay. But the cool thing is I can use this over and over again. So I can actually use this tag multiple times. So if I were to do this, doot, 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 I'm gonna get 4 hello worlds, and that's nice because I don't have to rewrite it, all that code over again 4 times. So it gives you like this nice encapsulated component, which you might be familiar with if you ever use like React or Angular or Vue. This is very similar to how they work. Okay, so again, there's always 2 steps. You create the class, and then you register the class with an HTML element. Now, it always says hello world. That's no fun. So what if we wanted to like make it a little bit more flexible? What you can do is you can use attributes. So let's just say we wanted to have a my text attribute. So we'll say const my text equals this dot get attribute my text. Okay, so we want to get an attribute called my text, and we're going to save it in this variable, and going forward, instead of saying hello world, it's going to say whatever the value of my text is. Okay, so now I have to add that attribute to each one of these elements. So I can say my text equals cheese. My text equals hello. Okay, so that's pretty cool. You could do that. That works. Yeah, that works. That's a possibility of how you could do that. And you can add as many attributes as you want, and you just grab them like you would in normal DOM. You could grab an attribute from any HTML element by using the get attribute function on the node. Okay, so I got that specific attribute, and we're in good shape. Also, what I could do is I could use something called slots. So if I wrote a slot here, so a slot is an element, and what it represents is the children. So the slot represents whatever I put between the opening and closing tag. So in this time, I type cheese here, and see now that says cheese. Hello. Goodbye. Because it's injecting whatever is in between the elements right wherever I had the slot in the HTML. So if I go here back to my shadow root, you see here the H1, well in this case the H1 is going to have like undefined in the slot or nothing. But if I go back up here, you can see cheese. Well, I go to the slot, text reveal. Oh, it doesn't want to reveal the text, but you can see it's cheese. Okay, so that cheese that gets injected where the slot is. It's pretty cool. You can do a lot, and there's a lot more. You can actually create functions. So I can add like functions on this. So just like any class, I could add a bunch of methods. It's as customizable as you want. So literally whatever you can imagine, you can build. It does take a little while to get used to. But if you kind of want to learn more about this, I would go watch my web component masterclass videos, where I get into a lot more detail about how you can kind of use these techniques to create all sorts of cool custom. And I think I have a couple videos where actually I build like a modal and a carousel using a web component, so you can see how that would be done. So I highly recommend checking those out. And this concludes this DOM masterclass series. Have a great day and enjoy.